Thank you for joining me, and this is Brad Eamon here with a video on my Tyrell Conclave deck that I played at Jesse's Name Day event. First off, I'd like to give a big thanks to Sam Bratz and Ryan Leonard, because they are the creators of the deck. I had no part in the actual design of this deck at all. I was merely just the pilot at the event. And second, I'd like to thank Jesse. He had a great event. It was a good party in the bar, and the bar crushed it too. The food was great. Everything went very well. And also a shout out to his wife for running everything. She did fantastic, and there wasn't a lot, if any, really problems with the rounds at all. I had a blast. It was a great time driving only and playing 7.5 hour climb, but it was definitely worth it. I had a blast. So overall, I ended up taking fifth with this deck, and I'm gonna just jump right in. So we're using the Conclave agenda, which the point of this deck is honestly to just hide behind Mace Tyrell. So we're gonna use Mace Tyrell to gather as much power on him as possible, and honestly, it's like 10 to 13 a game. You really do almost no challenges. So what we're going to abuse here is Mace and Hightower. Let me bring up Hightower quick. And then the way that these cards work together, for people that don't know, is after a character enters play under your control, this is Mace, sorry. After a Tyrell character enters play under your control, you can pay a gold to have him gain a power, and it's limit once per phase. And why this is really important is we're going to take advantage of Mace in basically like 3 to 4 phases a turn to gather him that much power a turn. And then he can also kneel our faction card to remove another Tyrell character we control from the game until the beginning of the next phase. Now, the reason that this combos with Hightower is because every time a Tyrell character enters play, we can gain a gold and draw a card, which is also limit once per phase. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the plots. We have a lot of plots. We have Flea Bottom, other characters with Ambush to get things into a bunch of different phases at once. So I'm going to go through the whole deck here and talk about where the strengths are. The huge upside is obviously with Hightower. If we bring a guy in, we can trigger Hightower first to gain a gold and then draw a card. And then we can go back to triggering Mace and putting a power on Mace. And basically once you get Mace out, you have about 2 turns or 3 turns where you're going to just collect as much power on him as possible and try to win the game. You don't want him to be around a lot with a lot of the board resets like Valor M and Valor D around, so you want to try to win as fast as possible. So let's go into the plots, and we can talk a little bit about why they're in here and how they work. Again, I forgot to mention, sorry about my voice. We had to do a lot of shouting because the bar actually ended up opening at about 8 o'clock that night, and the tournament didn't end until I think I got eliminated at like 10:30 or 11, and I had to do a lot of shouting because they were actually doing karaoke in the bar at the time. So I'm going to start with the plots. Our first plot here is called into service, and this is honestly where we're gonna use to abuse Conclave. There isn't like a ton of abuse for Conclave. There's really only 2 cards in the deck that strongly interact with Conclave. Basically, what we're trying to do is win at least 1 challenge with a Maester, whether it be attack or D, because Conclave lets us, anytime we win with a Maester at all, we get to swap one out. It doesn't matter if we're attacking or defending. So we're going to want, if we deal a Mace out into our Conclave, Nick Hansen actually corrected me on this, I think it's called the Rookery, he said, but if we deal a Mace out into the Rookery, we're going to want to put him on top of our deck so we can reveal him with Called into Service. You really don't need to push hard for a bunch of Maester wins. You probably only need like 1 or 2 Conclave triggers a game, if even that. If Mace isn't dealt out into your Conclave, and neither is any of your high power cards like Hightower or Flea Bottom, if you have them already, obviously you don't need copies of them unless you're playing against Greyjoy and you need to dupe up. But otherwise, once you have them, you have them. So Conclave makes it feel like sometimes you're playing with like a 53 card deck, which isn't really a problem because you know that the 53 cards in your deck aren't those cards and they're good. But anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to win a challenge with a Maester, and we're going to swap out the top card of our deck with, say, our Mace that we have in there, or if we have like a House Foreign Knight or some other big boy if we already have, it's like House Foreign Knight if we already have Mace. Otherwise, we're getting Mace. What this is going to do is reveal the top card of our deck. If it's a character, we just put it directly into play, and then if it's a non-character, we draw it and gain 2 gold. So you'll notice a lot of the plots here have almost no money. Like the average money of the deck is probably like 3. And the initiative is also terrible. We're passing challenges a lot in this deck because we're just trying to go crazy with Mace and put like 50 power on him. But anyway, so we're going to trigger Conclave, put Mace on top, and then use this to put him into the play the next turn. That's like the dream scenario T1, is if you can win a good Maester challenge on turn 1 and then put Mace into play on turn 2 with this plot. It feels great. Now this is also one of the plots that wombo combos with Hightower here, because this is going to let us use the plot phase to put a character in play. If Mace is already in play, we could use it to put, like I said, a House Florent Knight in, and then Mace can collect power during the plot phase. Another huge benefit of putting in a character during the plot phase is we can use Mace's trigger, his action ability, and then say if it's a House Florent Knight, we can remove it from play and then return it to play at the start of the draw phase. And that's extremely powerful because you get a House Florent Knight somebody 2 times before you ever even actually go to marshalling, so you can use it to chip off a lot of their little guys. Let's go on to the second plot. We have Close Call. This is honestly the highest money plot in the deck, or sorry, second highest money plot in the deck. Really, this is just here in case Mace gets like headstone spikes, or if he gets Valored and we don't have a save, we can just bring him back. This is also a good way to take something off the top of your dead pile if we need the card below it the next turn for, say, Ghosts, and we know that we're not going to claim a guy. This is just run-of-the-mill good plot in this deck because we need to keep like left and rights out of the dead pile. And being able to move them into the discard pile. I made some mistakes with this actually at the tournament because I wasn't paying close enough attention and didn't really have a great grasp on the deck, but we could like move left or right out of our dead pile, put them in the discard, and then flea bet on them back. And I honestly missed that probably 2 times during the event. I just like didn't recognize the synergy. I talked to Ryan about it and he told me and explained it to me, and then it made sense, but I just didn't even really think of it. So Close Call is very strong in this deck as well. We're usually using it to make sure that one of our dead guys doesn't stay dead. Next plot we have here is Ghost of Harrenhal. Yet again, this is another low income plot. The initiative, this is the highest initiative plot in the game with 5, and it's the highest initiative plot by like a mile. The next highest I think is It's Here to Serve, which is 3. We basically are just, like I said, going first almost every time in this deck unless you're playing against Greyjoy and they want to go first. So when this is revealed, we get to put the top character in each player's dead pile into play. It's super good because House Florent Knight discards characters from play. We don't kill a lot of characters because we're not making a ton of challenges. And this is basically just to keep like our Mace safe. Or if somebody kills, say somebody some militaries us, we can just claim House Florent Knight and then put him on top, and then the next turn put him into play for free and trigger him again. So yet again, this is another plot that lets us put characters into play during the plot phase, which is great with our Mace and our Hightower, and that's what we're kind of shooting for. So Here to Serve is going to get us one of our 12 Maesters. Usually you kind of save this for if Mace gets milked, and then you can go get yourself a Crescent. This is also another ability that puts a character into play during the plot phase. There's only one Tyrell Maester in the deck, so Mace and Hightower aren't going to trigger unless you get Lomas. Most of the time you're just using this to search for like a Tech Maester or Lomas if you really need to trigger Hightower or to Mace that turn. Late Summer Feast. I honestly didn't like this plot most of the day. I understand why it's here. Sometimes you just need $9. Hightower is an expensive location. All of your other locations have, or all your other plots have almost no money attached to them. So this is really here to just pound out like Mace if you have to, or Hightowers and Red Wines on like turn 1, or just play a bunch of House Florent Knights because they aren't honestly cheap. 5 gold is a decent amount to pump out for this deck. It's kind of hard. So like I don't like the win clause of this, but at the same time you don't really have much of a choice. Really all you have outside of this is trading with the Pentoshi, but I don't want to give my opponent any money because I'm trying to choke out all their little guys with House Florent Knight. Next we got Reinforcements. This is perfectly seated in this deck. Yet again, this is another 1 income 0 initiative plot, so not a lot going for it there. But on the upside is when it's revealed, we get to choose a character with printed cost 5 or lower in hand or a discard pile, and that's really important. A lot of people don't play with this plot and they forgot that it was discard pile. And what this is going to let us do is basically put in a House Florent Knight. Sometimes you put in Allery, that's not bad, but usually when you be on like the top end curve of the expensive characters. Yet another plot that triggers Mace and Hightower, and that's definitely how this deck was designed, is we're going to take, like I said, take advantage of Mace and Hightower in almost every phase. So we have right now, Reinforcements will trigger it, Here to Serve will trigger it if we get Lomas, Ghost will trigger it if we buy back any dead Tyrell guy, and then Call to Service will trigger it if the top character of our deck is Tyrell. So that's like 4 plots that can possibly trigger Mace during the plot phase, which is great because we're just trying to win as fast as we can. And then our last plot is Valoram. Initially the deck list didn't have this in it, and then I ended up playing against like big renowned decks and just needed it, so we swapped it out. The first version that Ryan made of this deck was pretty greedy, and you'll hear me mention some of the changes that we made together when talking about the deck. And he knew it was greedy, so like the changes came very obviously. There originally was 2 called into service in this deck, and then 1 Valor M. We really didn't need called into service twice because you're usually using it to just put one mace or one house floor at night into play. But yeah, so that's a plot. That's the plots. The plots, like I said, the income is just terrible. Tyrell has the benefit of having great resources, and a lot of the characters really don't have a cost ultimately. You're either just flea biting him back and then blinking him with mace and keeping him, but we'll get to that later when I get to him. So let's go down to the characters here. Our first character, we have 3 Allery Tyrells. She's fantastic in this deck, so she's going to enter play and then search for 3 or lower cost Tyrell characters, which is basically left and right. Sometimes you can grab like Lomas dupes. Most of the time you're just grabbing left and right or one of your Elena's informants or Old Town informers, so like tech guys that you're going to use. She is fantastic because it's every time she enters play, not when she's marshaled. So if you blink her, you get to trigger her. So if you blink her with mace, and then if you cheat her into play during the plot phase or Ghosts of Harrenhal or something, you're going to get to trigger her. Most of the games, I was honestly hitting her 2 or 3 times a game and getting her effect, which is just fantastic when you need a million dupes. In the Martell matchup, I really needed a lot of left and rights because V-Boy just started eating them all alive, and I needed to make sure that I kept getting dupes so they didn't die. So let's move on to the second character we have here. 1 Emissary of the Hightower. So this is basically Snapcaster Mage. This is going to let us choose an event and replay it. Most of the time you're just playing Baron the Maiden Fair again, which is absolutely fine. Sometimes you'll hit Healing Expertise, most of the times you won't. You could do it if you need it to save a claim that would have hurt you really bad, and you don't want to claim your Emissary. Or if you fleet bottom her back. Most of the time you're grabbing Baron the Maiden Fair, but Healing Expertise does give you another option. She's not crucially important to the deck. She's just very good at a 1-of. If we discard her during the game, we can always sleep bottom her back and use her ability, because you can also marshal her and play it to the Rose Banner. It isn't the strongest play in the world, but if you don't have another Tyrell character to play and you want to trigger Mason Hightower that turn, it's worth it to play her and then possibly sack something else or just play a bear during marshaling. We got 2 Garden Caretakers. This is just the Chud Reducer. Honestly, after playing this deck for 1,000,000 rounds, I want these to just be completely gone, and I would probably replace them with 1 Gates of the Moon, because then you need the econ back. Giving your opponent gold kind of sucks, but we need the econ. So I would take 1 out for that, and then I would take 1 out for probably a 3rd Elena's Informant. So the reason why I don't like these guys is because they're a non-bow with House Florent Knight, which is our next guy. And we're going to honestly spam the absolute shit out of him. Between reinforcements, getting him into play during the plot phase with other effects as well as ghosts, blinking him with mace, we're honestly going to put him into play like 3 or 4 times a game. So we don't want any character to be in our deck that has strength 1. 2 is fine. We can't really get much higher than 2, and he's a base strength 3 anyway, so we can't go that high up the ladder. But if we completely cut the Garden Caretakers and get rid of all of the 1 strength guys, then we can hit anything that has strength 2 or lower with him, which feels great. He was honestly probably the all-star of the day, next to Mace. Mace is where the deck is based around, but this guy is like, if Mace is the meat, he is the potatoes. I did like 3 claim a guy before challenges, which was really interesting. So like reinforcements back, a House Florent Knight, use Mace to blink him, bring him back at the start of draw, and then I marshal a House Florent Knight, and I killed 2 Red Cloaks and like the Lannister Maester, which just felt powerful because I left him with nothing but a Tyrion. I just took 3 characters off the board at the start of the turn, and I got 2 3 strength military intrigue icons out of it. So I like went from a game where I was somewhat behind because those guys had 1,000,000 gold on them to it being just a blowout. He's fantastic, and you will absolutely love playing him. He feels just dirty sometimes. 2 House Maesters. This is honestly just to meet the Maester cap. After my experience with a bunch of the rounds, I would probably just throw in another Crescent and have only 1 House Maester. There's some other Maester options. I didn't take a ton of time looking at them. Like I know there's Dreadfort Maester and stuff. But realistically, right now, I can comfortably say to turn 1 of those into another Crescent, and I would have to do like a little more research and see what the other Maesters do. I know for a fact I didn't want to add in the 1 strength, like any of the other 1 strength Maesters, because I don't want to have a non-bow with Florent Knight. And then we got the Wassa Special here. We got the left, and we got the right. These guys are just absolutely insane. I knew I was going to play a lot of crossing decks, so having left and right to just be able to block everything felt absolutely fantastic. These are like, this is like a part of this deck that 100% screams Sam Bratz is the left, the right, and the House Fortnights and a way to abuse him. And to the Rose Banner. Like, those cards are all just the way he wants to be playing the game. Mace Tyrell we talked about a lot, so I'm just going to gloss over him quick. By blink, when I say blink, I mean his action ability, so the kneel your faction card to remove another Tyrell character. He's extremely powerful, and honestly, in the format that we were playing, like the team format, where you have to play against a different faction every round, a lot of factions just have no way to interact with Mace. And I have answers to milk, so it really leaves not many choices for them to turn him off. It's really hard. And if you nightmares him, it's only going to matter for like one phase. And if I'm using him for like 3 or 4 phases a turn, a nightmares isn't really that strong. And if I get it all done during draw and plot, there's not really a ton you can do to him. So I'm going to move on here. One Mace Raymond Core. This guy's just fantastic at soaking military claim. Not really much to him outside of that. I don't want more than one copy of him. One's just fine because he just saves himself. He can't save anyone else in the deck, so he just sits there and soaks claim every turn. 3 Caliots. I love this guy. Fantastic Maester to play. You do lose a lot of challenges in this game, so he is like your favorite Maester to grab and defend with. And if you put him in challenges, they don't want to lose, or they don't want you to lose because they don't want you to strip icons, but they don't want you to win because they don't want you to trigger Conclave. So he's a really damned if you do, damned if you don't card in this deck, and he's probably the best Maester overall for the deck. Next Maester we have here is 2 Crescents. Like I said, I wanted 3. I definitely wanted 2. The initial version only had 1, and I wanted 2 because either through Intrigue Claim or him getting stuck in Rookery means that you didn't have him, which if you got 1 in Rookery, you could still Here to Serve out the other one, which felt really good, so I wasn't as scared of like milks and other conditions like bodyguards and such. I would honestly take him up to 3. I think he's worth cutting a House Maester for and just losing the Intrigue icon and just having a million ways to deal with everything that turns off Maze. Next one is Lomas. In-house Tyrell Maester, he's pretty dog shit, in all honesty. You have to win a challenge on D to make them discard a card at random, but he is a Tyrell character. He costs 3 or less. He comes into play during the plot phase, and that's really all you need to know about him. And then the last Maester here we have is Maester Windermere. It's good to get a stealth on a power icon. I like that he costs 2. We did talk about like the 3-drop Maester from Borrow with stealth. But a lot of this deck, it feels like 2, 4, 6, 8 on the flop because you have Hightower and you have Old Town and left and right. So you have a lot of characters that cost 2 mixed with a lot of locations that cost 4 that you want to set up, or locations that cost 2 with like red wine straights as well. So just like flop-wise, I feel like he's better, and he's just easier to play. This deck chokes out a lot on gold, and there isn't a ton of it on the plots, so like being able to play a 2-cost a 2-cost Tyrell character, my bad, and then being able to still play Windermere, like having 4 gold is a reasonable amount, and usually Hightower refunds you 1, so having possibly 3 gold, 2 if you still put a power on Mace, like 2 is just the right number. I just don't want the 3-drop guy, and it's really, he's just there for the stealth, so. And Conclave, because we need to meet a 12 Maester minimum. Then we got 2 Old Town Informer here. So this chick is just absolutely insane in this deck, and she's very randomly good against other decks. Anybody that jumps people in during challenges, she feels very, very good against. She's very poor against Big Cersei because discarding cards just puts power on her, and we don't want to do that. But basically what I would do with her is ambush her in during, say like during marshalling, I'd play like a weak Tyrell guy, a small Tyrell guy, like a left or something, trigger Hightower and Mace, save money, and then put her into play during challenges, and usually bestow her with 2. So what she's going to want us to do is draw cards and discard cards, and one of the weirdest feelings in this deck that I don't have a lot in other decks because there isn't a ton of discard engines, besides Targ with Plaza, is you want to discard stuff to flea bottom to her. So like we want to be pitching Alana's Informants. You can pitch a dupe if you need it. Even some of the Maesters, like bringing back a Calio, it's fine if you don't want to play him. Bringing back Windermere and making a challenge is fine. But basically you want to put Tyrell guys in your discard pile. So outside of the couple Maesters that I mentioned, you mainly want to put Tyrell guys in that can be flea bottoms. So you can activate Mace a lot during challenges. She is a very strong card in this deck. Normally she doesn't feel the greatest in the world, but in this deck she just shines. She's fantastic. We got 2 Olena's Informants. I would want 3 here. She buys us an additional challenge, which is okay if somebody wants to go first. Like if the crossing decks want to go first on us and pound us, then we can actually crack back with real challenges. She's good to buy back because she triggers Mace, and she gives us an additional challenge, which it actually is kind of hard sometimes to defend against this deck in like Intrigue or Power, because a lot of our guys just have a million icons for that. I definitely think I would want 3 of her. She seemed really good every time that I had her. Maybe 3 is too many. I think I would just give it a try with 3 and then maybe cut down if you didn't like it. And then I already went over right there, so we're going to move on. 1 Crown of Golden Roses. This is just 100% for the King plot, and not really else. There's only 1 target for it in this deck, which sucks, and it's Mace. I thought about playing a Renly instead of this because it'll give us another called into service target. That's something that I would need to test. This is cheap, easy to play, and you really only care about King plot if you have Mace and friends out. So like if you don't have Mace, Crown wouldn't help you anyway. And like if I had a Renly instead, it wouldn't be that insane because the deck's winning with Mace and Hightower, not Renly Baratheon. So maybe the Crown is the right choice. I never got to play it. I did play against the King plot 1 time, and I definitely dug for this. And like having an answer felt good. It gave me like an objective to go for, and I didn't just have to suck it up and get stomped by King plot. I didn't draw it, but at least having an out to it definitely made me feel a lot more comfortable inside. All right, 3 Flea Bottom. Card's absolutely insane already, but in this deck it feels just even pushed to a newer level. Between Olena's Informant, triggering Old Town Informer, putting in, say, an Emissary of the Hightower and playing an event again, like all that stuff just feels insane. And then you get to trigger Hightower, put a power on Mace. It's just absolutely disgusting in this deck. This was probably one of the biggest abuses of this card that I've seen in a long time. The Targ, obviously Targ taking back Second Sons feels fantastic, but when you Flea Bottom a character in this deck, you have like 4 cards that you get to trigger with it. It's really like it's the most efficient way to gain power with Mace during the challenge phase. Having to blink with him feels kind of bad during marshalling and getting something during challenges because you wish you just had a Flea Bottom. It also helps protect our other cards from Nothing Burns like the Cold, and it is cheap, so we can just replay it. 3 Old Town here. This is gonna, so we can kneel Old Town, name a card type, character, location, attachment, or event. Reveal the top card. If it has that card type, we draw it and gain a power. This is just like another good passive power gain. It feels like kind of a mini wall. Like it feels like a wall that draws you a card and gains you a power. It's insane with Conclave because we can know the top card of our deck. And we also have a ton of Bear in the Maiden Fairs. So outside of that, we also have a way to manipulate the top outside of Conclave. Very rarely do you like trigger this thing and have to name in the blind. If you're going to do it, obviously your best choice is characters. We have 34 of them. With most decks, you have more characters than anything else. And even if you whiff, you still get to know the top card of your deck, and if it happens to be something you want, you could call into service it, because you don't draw it unless it has the card type. So just knowing what the top card of your deck can matter with a couple of your plots. Like if you want to name, say, location, and if it happens to be a character, if you haven't played your called into service yet, you could just play that. But most of the time you're just naming character and honestly just dealing with it. Occasionally you'll get to just know what it is, and that feels great because it's just a guaranteed power and a draw. Next card is 3 Red Wine Straits. Just insanely good income. Nothing really to talk about here, just a Tyrell staple. 3 Rose Garden, same thing. Need more econ because our plots have none. Here's the Mighty Hightower that we spoke of. After a Tyrell character enters play, we draw a card and gain a power, or gain a gold, sorry, not a power. This is the second half of Mace. Just an absolutely fantastic card. The fact that this is once per phase and not just like once a turn or something is absolutely insane in this deck. 3 Rose Road, general run-of-the-mill econ. And then we get to the last 7 cards here. We got 3 Bear in the Maiden Fair, which is going to let us manipulate the top 5 cards of our deck. Really important with Call into Service because we know what we're getting. It can let us cheat a Mace into play without winning a challenge with a Maester. It's also going to let us bury a lot of cards that we don't care about. This deck, because Hightower keeps drawing cards, and Old Town Informer keeps drawing cards, and Bear lets you manipulate, and Old Town also draws cards, we get to go through like a ton of our deck in one turn. You actually end up with like usually 15 to 20 cards that you haven't drawn by the end of the game. And that's with a reasonably fast win, because you will just plow through cards super fast in this deck. I love Bear in the Main Fair. It's a fun event. Cost 0. Super easy to use. You get a bottom garbage that you don't want to see. It's just all around feels great. 2 healing expertise. This could possibly come up to 3. I would have to look at like the list, I guess, more attentively and play it more to cut something for it. It just lets you save people, so it's another way to protect your mace from Valors and stuff. Also, you can save important characters, and most people forget that this card honestly exists. I had a lot of people just like read it and be like, oh, that seems insane. Where I would just save like a Lomas that was duped with himself, save my Aemon, and then kneel my Lomas to save my mace, and like their Valor seems almost ineffective. Then they basically killed a dupe and made me take a card out of my hand. But yeah, this was just an all-star for me all day. It sucks when you get one of these locked into Conclave that you usually want to take out. It feels great when you have one in your hand because you feel a lot safer, and Valor doesn't scare you as much. It's definitely like a good security feeling having this card in your hand. And then the last 2 we have here is To the Rose Banner. Oops, sorry about that. The last 2 we got is To the Rose Banner, so we can choose a Tyrell character, gain X gold or X as its strength, and then sacrifice it. This is huge at putting, say, Old Town Informers, or sorry, not Old Town Informers, Elena's Informants into the discard pile to flea bottom them back. Even other just chumpy Tyrell characters that we want to turn into gold so we can play a House Fortnite that turn. And then we can put them in the discard pile, which isn't a big deal. Being able to like sack Allery as well and then replay her to search out like a left or a right if we need him really bad is fine. It's only like a 1 gold loss to do that if we need to trigger her twice. But most of the time you're just throwing babies back into the discard pile to buy them back with flea bottom. I'm trying to think. There was an interaction that I missed talking about, which was, some people don't know this, most people do, I guess, is when you remove some Tyrell character from the game during challenges with Mace, if it was a character that you flea bottomed back, you get to keep it, because flea bottom says at the end of the phase, if the card is still in play, you place it on the bottom of your deck, but it's not. It's removed from play with Mace, and it doesn't come back until the start of the next phase. So you get to keep characters there too. Overall, I really liked this deck. It's very, very fun, and I would say it's the best Game of Thrones deck to teach you how to not miss triggers. Every turn, you're triggering like 10 to 12 cards, and they all feel very small, but when you put them together collectively, it's insane power gains in a turn. You go up like 3 or 4 power on Mace. You actually have a lot of money. Hightower just produces you money if you're not paying into Mace, and allows you to play him quite early. Old Town doesn't feel insane, but like adding the passive power gain as well as cards adds into the cards that you already have, and the passive power gain for Mace, and just everything just wombo combos together in this deck, and it feels absolutely fantastic. And like I said, like Flea Bottom is a like just insanely great card to begin with, but this deck just takes it to a whole nother level and makes you really feel the power level of Flea Bottom as well as the power level of Mace. But yeah, played a lot of rounds with it, had a good time, ended up taking 5th. I lost to Emma in the top 8, and I made a lot of mistakes in that game, and she absolutely played well and took advantage of it, and I loved her as an opponent. She's a fantastic opponent, and if you could ever get a game in against her, I would recommend doing it. She's great. Some other people that played, Brandon Zimmer. Sorry, Brandon Zimmer. We're into each other again. He got to 13 power, made a mistake, and then I just maced off, basically. But yeah, otherwise, I lost to CT in the Swiss rounds, who was on Stark Targ. I made a mistake and duped a Crescent, and then he warded it and Ramsey'd me, and that felt absolutely terrible, so that was kind of a blowout. Otherwise, I went 6-1 during the Swiss, and then took 5th overall. But yeah, huge shout out to Sam and Ryan for hooking me up with this deck. I honestly had never played it, and it seemed fantastic and fun, so I gave it a whirl. Big shout out again to Jesse and his wife for running a great community event, and like 68 people into a nowhere town. It's like, dude, Jesse, we love you, man. Going all the way to Olney, it was fantastic. I loved hanging out with you on your birthday. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to message me on Facebook. I wouldn't bug Sam or Ryan, I guess, unless they're okay with that. You could talk to them and ask them. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Feel free, hit me up on Messenger. Otherwise, I guess I'll see you at the next tournament.